Dr. Dr. Liz Nganga. She defines herself as a social scientist and a communication specialist with a large experience in the research and development sector, corporate public relations, and mainstreaming journalist. She holds a master's on African studies in the University of Edinburgh, and also a PhD from the Open University, also in the UK, on science, technology, and management. She's been working for a long time as a communication head in ADCP, but she's also been doing a lot of things for different international organizations, from the African Development Bank, FAO. She has also worked for the Secretariat Support Office of the African Union Commission. So she really has been in very different setups in international organizations across the world. But I also know Liz for a while. She's been, we were at the CIPE together, and I know that she's a storyteller. She's a writer, and more than that, she's also an activist. And I also thought it was fantastic to have her here with us, because it's activism on science, decolonizing perspectives. So that's why we thought she could be the best person to tell us about the narratives of women in science. It's not only because she has done this fantastic book that I have here with me, and we encourage all of you who are interested in these stories that are really important, not only as a woman, also as a scientist, even if you're a man. We encourage you to go and look at this book, but we thought it was really important to highlight those narratives she's been really working on, and tell us more about how these narratives can really change the way we conceive the role of African women and African scientists doing science in Africa. So we're going to share soon in the chat the link, so you can download the PDF of this book that is actually in open access. But I think I should just now keep quiet and leave the floor to Liz, so she can tell us more about her storytelling journey and what she's been working on this fantastic book with this extraordinary woman. So Liz, the floor is all yours, my dear. You're muted.
I need to share.
Exactly, you need to share the screen.
Share
yeah, sorry, before we, sorry, I forgot, excuse me, Liz, before we continue.
I think I need permission to share.
Okay.
I need permission to share the screen.
Yeah. Good.
I need permission to share the screen.
Yeah. No, I think you don't. I think you are already co-host.
You should be able to.
Now you can share. You didn't have it. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So before we continue, Liz, excuse me, because I forgot to mention that. Liz is going to be presenting, so whatever you have questions or comments, keep them to the end, because we're going to have an interactive session, where we're going to let people open mics, and we're going to have this chat with Liz. Okay, so keep your questions until the end, and we can fire them to Liz once she's done with her presentation. I think now you can share screen, right, my dear?
Okay, one participant, advanced sharing, multiple, what? No.
You can go to share screen at the bottom.
Yeah, but it
you have to click in the green. Don't click in the small arrow. Click in the green, the big one.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then it's going.
Okay. There you go. Okay.
Okay, brilliant.
And then slideshow. Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you so much for having me. As Laura has said, I have had quite a convoluted journey to where I am today. But today I'll just focus on this book that I wrote for the Economic Commission for Africa. It is called Earth, Oceans, and Skies. And there is a good reason why we called this book that. Initially, we thought of it as profiles of African women scientists. But as we moved forward it just became clear that we were dealing with a much bigger issue than just profiles. We were dealing with a mighty force that is women scientists combined with women combined with science. And so we gave it this name that we hope encompasses everything that we believe in. It's all about power, earth, oceans, and skies. This book was written by the UN Economic Commission for Africa to mark the decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals. But when we wrote it, we were met with a lot of acclaim. Many people loved this book, but we had a few voices that said, but why are you focusing on women? Why not just men? Why not all scientists? And so I just wanted to start by saying why it is important to subcategorize women, because the scientific community is, as any other community, it's all about social worlds. It's a segmented. A social world, by definition, is a group of people that are brought together by joint activities or concerns. It is individuals that strive to act in a collective way. This is what the scientific community is, the international scientific community, that anybody who's gone through the training, acquired the accreditation, either a doctorate or whatever, is recognized as a scientist. But like any other social world, the international scientific community is not homogeneous. It is very segmented. Within that segmentation, sorry, think of, sorry, I'm
no worries, Liz. Sometimes you can go down to the slides. You see, there is a small arrow.
Oh, okay, I see. I can use that.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So the international scientific community is very segmented. It's about power, and I should just mention here that I'm basing this from my PhD research, where I looked at power as scientists. And to scientists, power as defined by Mitchell and Wood is about having the utilitarian or normative means to impose one's will in a relationship. So for scientists, it's, for example, having the skills, the technical skills, but also having the resources to do their science. So for African scientists, it is always assumed that they are the lesser social world within the international scientific community. This is, first of all, because of the numbers. We don't have the numbers in sub-Saharan Africa. Only 1.1%, according to statistics, of the world's researchers, and less than 92 scientists per 1 million people are from sub-Saharan Africa. This is in comparison to the global average of 1,080 scientists per 1 million inhabitants. Now, out of that, only 30% of the scientists in sub-Saharan Africa are women. This is the same as a global average, where 28% of scientists are women. But still, it means that only a very tiny fraction of women's potential to contribute to science is being utilized. Therefore, there is a very urgent need to understand why this is not so and what can be done to enable more women to enter and to thrive in the scientific world in Africa. Therefore, it goes back to the same question that I started with. There is a very good reason to subcategorize women. We can look at, like I said, we can look at scientists as a community in sub-Saharan Africa, but it is very important that we keep looking at women as a segment of that social world. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because already scientists from sub-Saharan Africa are a minority, and within that minority, women are sub-minority. The second reason is because in Africa, the idea of honoring scientists, for example, through telling their stories, is very unsatisfactory. Once I asked, just randomly, I asked a number of people, name 2 scientists. I started with 10, name 10 scientists from Africa. Nobody could do it. I went down up to 1, and people fumbled and they couldn't really give me any names of scientists. So I think that profiling African women scientists is a way of recognition, and it helps right this wrong where we don't honor our scientists. The other thing is that the recognition system, the process through which you identify the people to be honored, is in itself very interesting. It's about legitimacy. It gives legitimacy because it involves 3 actors. It involves those comparing the accolades. For example, with this book, it was the UN, Economic Commission for Africa, those receiving them, who are the women that we selected, and those observing these exchanges, who are the general public. Therefore, it is a very strong way of helping to legitimize a social world, especially one that is marginalized. The second thing is that life histories, although they focus on an individual story, they create a mosaic of an era or a social group, which helps to see insights that would otherwise remain hidden. And it helps to see things from a 3D dimension, if not 4D, where you can see the political, historical, social, and economic context that have influenced the scientific technology endeavor, in this case, in Africa. So today I want to just take you through some of the women that we featured. What I also need to say here is that this for me was a labor of love. I am an artist working in the scientific field, and why I'd worked in the corporate sector, but when I came to work in the scientific field, I felt I'd come home, even though I'm not a natural scientist myself. And this is because I'm just fascinated by how scientists think, how they work, and what they do, especially those in Africa, where they're working against the odds. They have very few, like I said, power. They have no resources, and they have no recognition, very little recognition. And as I continued to work in the scientific field, I kept hearing this global narrative that there is no science in Africa, there is no science in Africa. And yet all around me were all these amazing people doing amazing work, all these scientists asking very good questions and struggling to get their work published. And yet that narrative persisted. So for me, my academic journey to go and study the power and scientists and to write this book is all a labor of love towards, like Laura said, my advocacy and my fight for science and scientists from Africa. So I want to take you through these stories that were told to me that prove this, that really challenge this narrative. When we started looking for these women, we wanted 25 women. And we used a very informal process to look for them. We asked organizations, colleagues, just very randomly. And we ended up with a long list of 100 very good women scientists. So in the end, we struggled to even choose the 25 because we had so many. So already that told us that this narrative, there's no science, women scientists, it is not correct, and it needs to be challenged, and it needs to be unpacked so that we can see, even if it's just 30% of women scientists that are women, who are these women? What is it they're doing? What is their story? How did they get where they are? And what is it we can learn from them? How can they inspire us in whatever we are doing to do our very best? I want us to hear from their own words. I wrote these stories, but what I did was simply to give agency to their words. I just gave life to their words. They told me their stories. I did the best that I could to pack those stories in an accessible manner, but the idea was to give them agency. So I want to start with this slide, which is called "A Child is Born." And the idea is to just show, where do scientists come from? How does the environment they grow up influence them? How does family influence them? For example, the story of Habiba Mohammed from Tunisia. She told me, as a young girl, I was very curious. I bombarded my mother and my sisters with questions. What is life? How does it begin? How does it end? What about the earth, the planet, the stars, and the universe? And truly, these issues were very important to me. I would spend hours just gazing at the sky, trying to imagine what was up there. So you see a child curious, we'll see later what happens to this child. My dear friend, Dr. Saganet Keremu, my boss, that Laura knows, told me in my village, girls were wedded off early through arranged marriages, but I was too rebellious, too much of a tomboy. I questioned the rules too much. As such, I did not attract any suitors. While this must have been distressful for my parents at the time, I knew all along that I was lucky. These traits were my ticket to freedom, to becoming an outstanding student, to striking a balance between having a family and a career, and to being the leader that I am today. What also amazed me when I was trying to see where these women scientists have come from, what the number that said my father helped me, my brother, my what. So it made me question a bit, in the patriarchal society that is Africa, are we really being fair to men? Or are men part of the village that raises scientists? Listen to the story of Asta Christos from Ethiopia. I was born in Shire, Tigray region, Ethiopia. My family life was great. I am the oldest of 7 children, brought up in a loving environment. My father, who worked at a malaria eradication center, was a dynamic and empowering person. I like to think that he was bound ahead of his time. My mother got married when she was 17 years old. After having her first 5 children, my father encouraged her to go back to school to complete her studies. As such, when I started high school, I found myself in the unique position of being in the same class as my mother. Now, Isabel from Togo told me my inspiration into science was primarily my father, who would often say that mathematics was a basis for success. This was an endorsement for me, as I was especially good at the subject. After completing high school, as I was especially good at the subject, along with biology and chemistry. But also there are all these social issues that women have to circumvent. For example, Tebelo Nyokong from South Africa, she told me, I was born at a time characterized by rising anti-apartheid resistance movement and political instability in South Africa. Therefore, at the age of 8 years old, I was sent to live with my grandparents in Lesotho. In the country, sheep rearing has always been a major source of livelihood, and during my childhood, the community relied on their children to shepherd this livestock across a network of rivers and mountains. So I joined the well-established routine of youngsters, putting in shifts, tending the animals, and attending school on alternative days. My parents believed in education, and indeed, my father's family held it to be the armament to topple apartheid. So as we can see, there is a really, the story of how women become scientists and where they come from is complicated and fascinating in very many ways. So I also wanted to know how these people now get onto the journey of becoming scientists. And Maryam Shadid, Habiba Muhammad told me, my inspiration into science was my curiosity to understand life, in addition to 2 other factors. First, throughout my life, I had encountered and developed a sensitivity towards people with health problems. Second, when I sat my exams, I was ranked highest, and for this accomplishment, my school presented me a book by a French physician and researcher who is credited for introducing the scientific method in medicine. Maria Andrade, award-winning World Food Prize award winner, was inspired into studying agriculture because of drought and famine in her native Cabo Verde, where she grew up. This was the same story of Segenet Keremu, who witnessed as a child her family's entire crop wiped out by armyworms and swarms of locusts. So many of these women, well, what we can see is an alertness that helped them to start thinking from a very young age how science could be used to solve problems. But there is also the story of Evelyn Bende from Tanzania, who is a geologist. And she says that my interest in science started when I was young. This was the period of Apollo program. My father used to tune in to BBC, and I dreamt of becoming an astronaut because I would see the Apollo missions, they were accelerating, they were arousing me in that dream. I opted to study geology because the astronauts would bring back rock samples from the moon for analysis. I felt that of all the courses available, geology, the study of the earth, including rock formation and evolution, came closest to my childhood dream. There is a story of Judith from Benin who felt that, whose first visit to the gynecologist at 12 years old, she felt that doctors did not understand, male doctors did not understand women, and she felt that we needed more women scientists who would attend to female needs. And Tebelo again said, my scientific journey started in Lesotho, a scenic land of tall mountains and narrow valleys, where I found solace in nature's beauty, learned to appreciate the science in that nature, to bond with the environment and ask questions about it, to listen to the birds and identify them, to know which plants are edible, to have an inquisitive mind. So I think the question we should be asking ourselves at this point is, how should we be encouraging, noticing these signs and encouraging young girls from a very tender age to be more alert and to answer their questions and to nurture their passion from a very young age. So Mariam from Morocco said that when I was 12 years old, my brother gave me a book that defined the rest of my life. It was by the German astronomer Johannes Kepler, and it was about the laws of planetary motion. Published in the 17th century, the book described the planetary system, its movement around the sun, and other physical phenomena. From the moment that I read that book, I told my family, my teachers, and indeed anybody who cared to listen, that I was going to become an astronomer. This proclamation was met with disbelief because nobody in my community knew anything about astronomy. My family wanted me, the academically gifted child, to enter a classical profession like medicine or law. However, I was committed to my decision, and I was sure that my life would be exciting and full of adventure. So it all starts really well, but there comes that moment for many people, whatever career you're following, when you meet a fork in the road, and you have to, and it's at that point that we start to lose our dear women scientists. So for Alsacia Atanasia from Mozambique, this happened in 1981 when her family was torn apart by the death of her father. And in fact, she was just completing secondary school. Her family, after her father died, ended up destitute, and she was just about to drop out of school until, just by mere chance, the president of the country at that time, Samora Machel, heard her story, and he offered her a scholarship, and she was able to complete her studies. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the wonderful veterinarian that she is today. So Asta Gabriel Christus, she said, I loved school and I was an active, keen, and bright child, and it was expected that I would easily attain the grades needed to go to university. Thus, the day that I received my high school results was one of the most painful in my life, to find out that I had not even qualified for university, let alone medical school. So she says, I now believe that this turn of events was destiny. When presented with two options for a diploma course, teaching or forestry, I chose the latter despite not knowing what it entailed. So I should say today that Asta is one of Africa's very, very few dendrochronologists. That is the science of dating trees. Just because of this fork in the road, where she thought she would become a doctor, she didn't. She was offered a very random chance to study forestry, and then she found a very, very exciting career. So never give up. So I think the story of Farasade is one that resonates with many women. Farasade Ogunshora from Nigeria, who was offered a PhD in the United Kingdom when she had 3 children. She was a mother of 3 at that time. And Her youngest was only 4 months old. Many people tried to discourage me from accepting the offer, and I would have succumbed to pressure had it not been for my mother, who, based on her own experience, motivated me to accept the opportunity. My husband rose to the occasion and looked after our young family in my absence, supported by my sister-in-law and a plethora of relatives. So the story of Tebela Nyakong was a bit unique. She says, upon completing high school, I found myself at yet another crossroad. My desire to pursue to university was at odds with my family's quite logical expectation that I would secure a job to support my siblings who are still in school. There were also concerns about when I would get married if I kept going. I was independent-minded, envisioning that one could be a wife and a mother, a breadwinner, and contribute to society. I did not want to disrespect my family, so I compromised. I worked for a year, mixed cement and concrete and named bricks for my father's construction company until my younger sister completed high school. Tebelo today is one of South Africa's most outstanding nanotechnologists. So the story really, I mean, her sacrifice paid off. So, but Sasha again, we meet her again. She says, my interest in science started in primary school. While I was good at both natural sciences and social sciences, I enjoyed the former more. I wanted to study human medicine, but to attend medical school, I would have had to relocate to the city. At this point, she was in a relationship and her partner said, if you move to the city, we're done. So she stayed where she was and instead studied veterinary medicine. Whether that was a good thing or not, it's not very clear. So Aminata from Senegal. My father, a man of letters and human and social sciences, was against my entering the world of science. Indeed, my family consisted of eminent philosophers, economists, and financiers, and he wanted me to carry on this tradition. My desire to follow another path was difficult for him to take, and he was afraid that I would fail if I chose a trajectory other than the one he had charted for his family. So the story that touched me most was of Catherine Nakalembe from Uganda. You've all heard of the movie Queen of Katwe, the slum in Uganda. That's where she grew up. And somehow she managed to get admission to the United States, to the University of Maryland. But she says, while it was fantastic to be accepted into such a prestigious institution, I once more faced the challenge of coming up with tuition fees. To put things into perspective, my family could not afford to send me to a university in Uganda, where fees were a fraction of those being charged in the United States. So raising $18,000 over a 9-month period seemed like an elusive goal. My mother was a warrior. She went around to her friends and also tapped into group savings cooperatives, and she managed to raise $9,000 for the first semester. But come the second semester and her back was against the wall, and she went and begged and pleaded and presented her case to the university, and she managed to get a rebate on the tuition. So Farasade was another interesting story because she describes herself as cocky when she was in school. She had never had to read much, and her overconfidence is what did her in. When I took the preliminary examination and I barely prepared, the result was that for the first time in my life, I failed an examination. Fortunately, I had the time to receive. This time I had read and revised with all my energy. I was certain that my hard work would pay off, but then I fell ill just before the exams and I failed again. While I had thought that I would be going to medical school, instead I had to repeat the year. For about a month, I could not go to class because I was too embarrassed. However, one day I realized that if I carried on as I was going to fail. Therefore, I mustered the courage to go to class. I considered this happening to be a cautionary tale about cockiness, a lesson that I needed to learn. It taught me that one must work hard. It strengthened me and made me responsible. So I stopped being cocky and realized that nothing is guaranteed. I've not looked back since. So I think we're beginning to see, how this journey is shaped and where we lose women and where we find them, what saves them and what does not. So there also comes a time when women face a tough decision to leave their own countries. This was the case with Maryam, because she could not study astronomy in Morocco, and she needed to go and do that in France. And she says, my father could not understand how I could leave my country to go to another to study. He also knew that nothing was going to stand between me and my dream of becoming an astronomer. So he conceded. It was difficult to go against my parents' wishes, but I moved to France. Unlike all the other students on the master's course, already had training in astronomy, I also lacked funding. To remedy these challenges, I took private lessons and worked part-time. So the same is true for Faji Maina, who opted to go and a water scientist who opted to go to the United States, although her initial goal of studying water science was the problems in the Sahel, but she felt that that is where she would get the skills that she needed. So again, I go back to my dear friend Farasade, who was in the unique situation of Nigeria in the 1998. Because of the military dictatorship, the universities were cut off from international funding. So she's told me we were blacklisted and grants were no longer coming in. When I looked to the future, I saw nothing, just darkness. But I told myself that I was not going to sit idle or leave the university. I looked for options. I asked one of the professors for research equipment, but he said he had none to spare. He offered me a broken water bath, a device used to incubate biological samples, and a microscope which I repaired. This allowed me to maintain a level of research. Another hand resulted from my decision to confront a senior professor about what I considered to be gender insensitive behavior towards me. Although he apologized, I suffered the consequences. For a year or two, I was excluded from certain research activities and meetings, and I could not travel to academic events outside Nigeria. So this for me was quite a difficult story to deal with. But I know it's true for many women who find themselves in our very patriarchal university students, university situations in Africa. But I think what I learned from Forasade's story is that if you stay and you fight and you're good at what you do, eventually you will prevail. Today, she is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, so she is a boss. So my next set of slides is called For the Love of Science and Africa. And I just wanted to very quickly give a snapshot of what these women are doing from two perspectives. These women are not only contributing to the global knowledge hub. Today's science, we're told that Africa only contributes 1.1%. I don't know where that figure comes from. And also to solving actual problems in Africa. That's why I've said for the love of science, they're contributing to the global knowledge hub, and for the love of Africa, they're solving problems on the ground. Maria Andrade has changed the game in food biofortification with her orange fresh sweet potatoes, which are helping to combat vitamin A deficiency, but also just the entire field of breeding for nutrition. Sagnet Kalemu changed livestock through the discovery of better ways to grow brachiaria grass that is native to Africa, which is cultivated as livestock fodder in many countries, to develop more resistant and more productive varieties. Alsacia Atanasio, her groundbreaking research led to the global geographical indication of Cabrito de Tete, the goats of Mozambique. Now they are registered by the World TO. Catherine Nakalembe Her data science is helping to improve food security in many vulnerable areas of Africa. Asta Gebrekristo, the Secretary of Trees, through dendrochronology, she's helping to combat climate change and agriculture. So Judith Sedamino from Benin, she is a world-leading immunologist whose science is not only groundbreaking, but also is helping to combat, especially the treatment of malaria in children. Aminata Sall Diallo from Senegal. She has been a leading researcher in hepatitis. Her data, her research helped to shift how hepatitis B is treated in children in Africa. The WHO changed their protocol for that based on her own research. Habiba Ben Mohammed from Tunisia. Her research is groundbreaking in terms of congenital and hereditary disorders in the Arab world. Udwak Okomo from Nigeria has changed the games on neonatal treatment of children, neonatal deaths in children. Faith Osel from Kenya is working on a malaria vaccine. Faji, I said, the Water Trust. Chandani Apado is leading the brew economy from Mauritius, and Hasina Mori is working on medical geology. What's her name? Evelyn Bende is a geologist working on the helium potential in Tanzania. These two ladies are very dear to me because I understand nothing of the science they're doing, but I know it's very important. Jihan Kamel is working on synchrotron light, and for biomedicine, for bioarchaeology. What Belon Yokong is using lasers and nanotechnology for cancer therapy, water treatment, and so on. Two astronomers, Mariam Chadid became the first astronomer ever to set up an observatory in the Antarctica in the world. She's the first to ever do that in the world. Zara is looking at is on the younger side of astronomy, and her research is looking at radio galaxies to explore the evolution of the active galactic nuclei. But what these women have in common is that as much as their science is really groundbreaking and so on, it is also very grounded in real life problems. So there are many of them, but I want us to jump and look at the leadership. Francine Toumi, her dream was always, educated in France, grew up in France. Her dream was always to go back to her native Republic of Congo to work there, but they wouldn't accept her. They said, you've lived abroad, you've studied there, we have no place for you. So in the end, she founded her own organization, which has now become the leading health research institution in the Republic of Congo. I mentioned Farasade before. She's now the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, despite a very complicated journey to that position. Ibrahim Bende has been changing the policy making and capacity building scenario in Tanzania. Segenet Kelemu, after an award-winning career abroad, came back to Africa to lead the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology. And these journeys, I think, if you have a moment, just pick the book and read it. And what will be fascinating to you is how they are interwoven into what is happening in Africa. So, for example, Tebelo Nyokong's story is also the story of a new South Africa, post-apartheid Africa, and the opportunities and the challenges that arose with that. same, like I said, with Segnet Keremu, it's about Africa at the turn of the millennium, an Africa that became more conscious about the importance of science. So how does a woman leader fit into that? Alsacia Atanasio, it's in terms of the national goals of Mozambique and how she's been the one that has led a lot of institutions. For example, the National Center for Biotechnology, she set it up and led it for quite a number of years. These women are also paying it forward and by mentoring other women. So Francine Toomey, she's got as her goal to make science a female ambition. She's got a very good organization that is working on that. Faji Minor who now works for NASA, she is not forgotten her native Sahel. She's very involved in women in the Sahel and their education and activism around that. So these women are also disruptive thinkers, and they gave me a lot of ideas on just the challenges that still remain in terms of science in Africa and what needs to be done. For example, Tebelo Nyokong told me, I remain committed to all these aspects, lending my voice to the transformation of South African education. I hope that through my research, its impact and numerous global recognitions, I serve as an example for young people, policymakers, and the general public, demonstrating that a person's background and circumstances do not determine their capabilities and that obstacles are not unsurmountable. So Maria Andrade said, I have demonstrated thought leadership through the promotion of a disruptive concept, the sweet potato, which was considered by some, especially men, to be of inferior quality. A male farmer once suggested that this variety was unfit for animals, let alone human beings. Being able to take this on in stride while staying focused on the promotion of a product is a mark of courage. I consider myself to be an innovator because I can turn these challenges into opportunities. So Segnet Keremu says, I find it disconcerting that several decades later, many of the challenges I witnessed as a child still persist in the continent. Moreover, emerging threats like climate change have a bearing on Africa. This means that we need bold and decisive actions for investments in research, sustained, strategic, and long-term manner, supported by enabling policies. We must also add in international research knowledge system, we need to embrace the reality that a just, prosperous world will not be possible without inclusive processes that draw on the intellectual talent and aspirations of all people, especially the most vulnerable. As a scientist and African, I consider it my responsibility to think and to theorize from our distinctive geographical and socio-cultural perspectives and to be part of the movement of change. Faith Osel, in my view, had the strongest call to action for Africa, that we need more investments in science in Africa. She told me that in many cases, scientists from Africa end up to be the poor cousins on the table. So we therefore need to recognize our scientists and to invest in scientific research, especially basic research like the search for vaccines. I would like to conclude my presentation with this saying, this child will be great. And it was given to me by Catherine Akarembe, who I said grew up in a slum in Uganda and is now working for NASA as a data scientist. She said, people around me consider me to be resilient, persistent, and consistent. Indeed, one of my favorite quotations is from the book, This Child Will Be Great, the memoir of former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. It states that if your dreams do not scare you, they're not big enough. I find that it applies to my own life. As a child, it was not clear what I would be able to achieve as I had limited opportunities. In many ways, my lofty goals were far-fetched. Nevertheless, I proceeded on my journey one step at a time and found numerous helping hands along the way. I consider it my responsibility to better myself continuously at the same time as helping others to excel and achieve their dreams. So this child will be great is the message that I leave with you, that all women can be great. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to a conversation about this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. I think it's been a fantastic, really, really outstanding presentation. I was listening to you and I was trapped literally in your words and in the stories that you were sharing with us. We have been having a few comments in the chat. We had Karel, for instance, who had to go, but I would like to open the floor. It's like it's a few of us, so I invite. We have mostly women, I can see, and I'm happy. I would be very delighted to open up the mics, this conversation where we can engage with Liz. I have a few questions and comments, but I would rather have maybe our attendees today sharing their thoughts. Yeah, Angela, please go ahead and mute yourself, please. And let us know where are you. Oh, okay, there she is.
So thank you so much to the organizers for this session and the speaker. Very insightful. I'm Dr. Angela Migoa. I'm a pediatric rheumatologist practicing in Nairobi, Kenya. And I think this lecture just reminded me that my struggles are the struggles of so many other women pursuing academia and change. And it was a nice feeling that we are not alone. Sometimes you're so caught up in your struggles that you lose the bigger focus that this is not unique to us and that it's important to foster a community where we support one another. And this is now my question to the speaker. How do we create an environment, an ecosystem that makes it easier for the women scientists to continue scaling up to greater heights? Because I find that's now my struggle, because I'm looking for succession, other young women who can continue the journey, and most of them are shying away. So I don't know what we can do to help encourage them and create a favorable ecosystem. Thank you.
I take that? Did I proceed?
Sure, you take them as they come, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a question that I'm always asked, at the end of any session we've had on this book. And when we wrote it, I'd hoped that the United Nations Economic Commission would then, create this ecosystem, this, platform, I don't know. But that unfortunately has not happened because of a number of reasons. But I think it's very important, that sisterhood, that moment of solidarity. I think it's very important that it happens. I don't know how we can make it happen, but it should happen for sure. Because if we are trapped behind the statistics, we hear 30% of women scientists, of scientists are women. But where are they? What are they doing? What can we do together? How can we become a force? So I think, to me, that's a question that needs to keep being asked, and we need to keep working towards that kind of a platform.
Thank you. Thank you for all your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
If people have more questions, but I'm not seeing any more raised hands so far, but I have a question for you, Liz. I was listening to you and there was this input from Karel, who had to leave unexpectedly, but he said it was very interesting and that Europe is not aware of these narratives and all these young people in Africa, women and men who can do extremely capable scientific discoveries and science, but we don't get to see them. And my question to you is, Liz, how can we put all those narratives in the spotlight, not only in Africa, but also here? They have to be in both continents. They have to be everywhere, what is what we can do, those who matter, those who care about those narratives, to help them, give visibility.
Yeah, to put them in the hands of the people who matter. I think in a way, everybody matters because everybody needs to hear these stories. Because like I said at the beginning, even now, if you ask anybody in Kenya, for example, name 2 scientists, they won't be able to. And also then when you move, like I'm a social scientist, but when you're studying science, technology, and innovation in Africa, it's really about the statistics. Africa only contributes 1.1% of whatever. But the reality is that we have a group of African scientists, a really group and a very strong one, you know this, that's working really hard and producing good knowledge. How can we make sure that people know what's going on? How can we make people see? I think there has to be more of us doing this, telling these stories. I think so. I think we really have to keep going. We have to keep telling these stories. I don't know. I'm not really sure whether having, I guess, a network that deliberates on these issues consistently. I don't know how we can do it. I'm also still lost on this. And also having a recognition system, really rewarding scientists, just like we do with our sports people, with our artists, with our political heroes. I think we need to have that as well for scientists.
Yeah. Actually, here in the Open Doors Fellowship Program, we really try to do that and bring those narratives of women and give put them in the spotlight. Because for us, it's very important that we tell people that they're doing extraordinary science. It's not that they come here because they need help. They have already their research. They want to look for partnerships. They want to look for complementarity. They want to expand networks. This is not charity. But before we give the floor to Alice, one of the challenges, I'm not sure if you found that, Liz, while you were doing your book, is that sometimes we women feel comfortable being in the spotlight, right? So we don't feel, because we've been maybe raised in this setup where like what you do doesn't matter, or you have to really push yourself through science, through a male-dominated world, and sometimes we've been told that we have to be invisible and not make too much noise because that's the way to get. So I also have felt among fellows, colleagues, myself, this discomfort when you are being put, in the spotlight. Well, I have the feeling that men don't have that. So I wanted to find out if you also experience that with the women in this fantastic book, because they're all amazing. And if it's something that you've also noticed, or maybe the people who are in the audience have also noticed, like,
I'd like to hear what the audience thinks. I think because these women are achievers, then maybe that wasn't so much. There were some that did feel, oh, me? You chose me? Why? What you get? They were really taken aback, and for a minute, they felt a bit of imposter syndrome. That, are you sure? Are you sure? Booked by United Nations, me, 25 women, you chose me? Why? That kind of thing. So a lot of them, I had to tell them, and some of them were saying, "God, what can I?" They kept thinking they might be dropped, that I might reach a point and think their story is not interesting enough, and then drop them. And they kept saying, "Can I send you more papers? Can I send you more of my papers?" And I kept saying, "No, it's okay. You qualify. We know that you qualify based on our criteria." So there was that. There were some women who are obviously very, very qualified, but even qualified women like Saganet Kelem, that you know very well, who is very well recognized. When I told her that, Saganet, we've chosen you to be in this book, she's still like, wow, really? So there is that imposter syndrome, and wow, somebody recognized me, little me. And I know it's the same with me. If you said you're going to give me an award, I would be, oh, are you sure? maybe ask somebody else. So yes, there is that. As women, we've learned our places in the background, and we're imposters. We're not good enough. And if somebody does something for us, we should thank them every day. So yes, I do think there is that. So I think the confidence and the awareness that women are as good as, and the recognition of themselves and their science, that is very important. I think that is very important. Yeah.
So we need to work in both sides, giving light to those narratives, but also making an effort whenever we are being asked to step, to step. But
exactly. We should be able to say, okay, thank you. I know, here I am.
Exactly. Alice, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Liz, for your presentation. And it was really encouraging, I would say. It's tough being on this journey as a female scientist, but knowing that there are many out there is quite encouraging. And I love the ending where you say every woman can be great. Indeed, I think, we can all reach there. Now, my question is, do you know of any platforms for African women scientists which are already in existence, maybe in form of associations, forums? And if they're not there, is there any hope that this is something that is already in the pipeline or maybe can be worked upon? And how can we as African women scientists champion this or contribute to this? Because I feel it would be really inspiring to the young girl back home in Africa, in rural areas, that we as women can be all. Because usually we are scared of, if I follow my career, what of the other part of life, marriage, family, and we already have the societal pressure that is already on us to achieve that. Actually, as a matter of fact, the African society values the motherhood, family more than the careers for a girl child. So we should really put up something that can inspire the young girl back home, that you can be a mother, a wife, and still champion at your career. So I think it would be good to have a platform or an association of African women scientists to hold events, to as a way create impact, to mainly inspire and show light to an African girl that it's possible. Personally, before I came for my master's, I felt like in the event that I get married before my master's, probably that's why everything ends. You get, so we should show them that it's possible. You can still balance everything else and also still succeed as a woman, as a scientist, among the males, So I think it's really good if we could look at, if it's not yet there, creating a platform, or if it's already there, how can we be a part of this? Thank you. But thank you. Your presentation was really insightful, and I'll really look forward to reading the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's important, because I've always thought that the Organization of Women in Science for Development, the one by TWAS, I thought that's what it does, but I'm not sure anymore. But I don't think there's a specific organization of women scientists in Africa. So that is something, I don't know who can take the lead in that.
Yeah, we have, we are collaborating sometimes with, it's called OSE, AAWSE, Association of African Women in Science and Engineering. But then eventually this may not fit your program, Alice, because you're a socioeconomist, aren't you? And then we have also the African Women in Bioscience, these two associations. But of course, what happens, I think you can get, and there are a few, you can also follow them, try to follow, I don't remember the name, but there are a few. You can follow them on Twitter, on LinkedIn. The challenge, though, is that all these associations don't have core funds. It's all volunteer work. And all these women are doing a fantastic, fantastic work. But sometimes things don't go that fast because there is not a budget dedicated for someone to really do continuous learning, like trainings or... But I know for a fact that you can pay for a small fee, and then they will invite you to maybe online event, or they will share with you opportunities. So you have groups, you can try to find them. But yeah, that's the thing. you need to dig a bit. But women are really mobilizing. I mean, they've realized that we need to be together. We need to support each other. And as much as Liz has said before, traditionally the patriarchal society has not helped women. We also have men there and allies that, but women know that there are men who will help, but mostly they realize that the sisters are the ones who are going to be maybe helping them most. But you can try to find out, and if we find out something, we will also, of socioeconomists, we will also let you know.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Natalie, now she got it. I think she got because she wanted to ask.
Yes, I got it. Well, thank you so much for organizing this meeting. I had part of it and I wasn't there at the start, but I had the ending part. I think it's a bit out of the presentation, but it's something that I'm just thinking about, because when my professor shared with me the link and it read, African women in science, and I'm thinking, what does that represent? When we say African women in science, what are we talking about? Are we talking about women that are also doing scientific research, that are involved in providing solutions? Like Alice and I are from the Faculty of Bioscience Engineering, and of course we're providing solutions, we're solving issues, but there is, when we say women in science, and we're actually referring to engineers, we're referring to doctors and all of these. So what does this definition entail? Is it a very narrow definition? Is it wider? And how do we get everyone on board? It's something that I am still interested in knowing.
Okay. Yes. So I've always been a bit torn between saying African women scientists and African women in science. I think African women in science is probably more encompassing, because it also includes, I don't know what we use in Africa, whether we use STEM or just science, technology, and innovation. But like Alice said before, people like myself who are working in science and are not scientists, then we're usually left out. So maybe African women in science would be a better way of doing it, I think. Because then you also include not just a scientist, but people working as technicians, people who are really contributing to the science. So perhaps that's what we might, Yeah,
I think that will help us once we can streamline that, that will even help us to create a bigger impact, Yes. So thank you so much for that response.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the thing about how do we come together, it's still this debate that we are having.
It's still a big question.
Yeah, it's still a big question. And then my question to you also, Liz, and because I can see a lot of, which I'm delighted, a lot of young scientists here, or women in science, we just said, for the new generation, of women in science, what do you think these narratives can represent? How can your narratives help them to build up their careers?
So I just wondered, do they feel that, for example, any of these aspects resonate with them? Any of maybe the challenges or the opportunities that these women have gone through, do they resonate with them? Do we have families that are more enlightened about boys are as good as girls and they deserve their chance? Do we have, I think in Africa now, most countries, they're very conscious about science, technology, and innovation. Has that made it easier for the younger generation? What do the younger researchers on the call, what do they think? Do they feel things have got better from what I was presenting than the older scientists?
It would be lovely to hear them speaking, so please feel free to unmute the younger generations.
Thank you very much. Sorry for just popping. I think I resonate a lot, mainly from the support system that most of these women had from their fathers, from family, because it takes a support system for you to really get to be highlighted in such a great context, And also, I think a bit of the challenges being in a patriarchal society, it also resonates a lot with us. And I think that's the same way another young woman in the coming generation and also in ours can really get related to this book and to these other women who have already made it, and they know that despite all this, we can also get there without giving up, and seeing that the challenges we are currently facing and they are likely to face are similar. Yeah, I think it's encouraging, actually. It shows that there's actually light at the end of the tunnel after all. Yeah.
Do you think the challenges are less or the same than the slightly older the generation?
I think now I would say it's less, because there's a bit of awareness of creating sort of equality among the girls and boys. Both should go to school, both have potential to achieve rather almost the same things. And yeah, I think it's much better now than what they faced. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's
And I
nice.
think, yeah, from infrastructure and policies, I think many countries have really tried just for science, technology, and innovation in general. But there are quite a number of initiatives that are targeting women, like Award, the African Women in Agricultural, whatever. The PASET that Laura, is allocating 60% of the opportunities for women. So I think there are far more opportunities now. What I don't really know is what we were talking about before. How do women see themselves? Do they still see, like myself, a bit, oh gosh, yeah, really? Or are they saying, good, I'm good enough and I'm going for it. I'm not just an affirmative action. I'm not getting this just because there's somebody who says 60% has to go to women. I'm getting this because I deserve it. I don't know how women are seeing themselves, and it's something that I would want to maybe hear. Yeah.
Very interesting. Maybe Angela, who had the hand raised, and then maybe Natalie after Angela.
Thank you. I think I echo the sentiments of Alice. The opportunities are more. And you can see the deliberate efforts to allow us to grow in science. However, I think the challenges are just evolving. I can't say the challenges are less or more. I think they're evolving. And when I reflect on my experiences, sometimes you find that you have good support from your family, your parents, but the society that you're in still has certain misperceptions or stigmas about how you're progressing. Another experience like I have heard, like sometimes you put in applications for grants, and it clearly says that even whether you get the grant or not, explanations are given, to help you improve. And sometimes you find that feedback is not forthcoming at all, even when you're trying to improve some of your skills. So I think the challenges do evolve, even though our opportunities clearly are improving. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Angela. I think Natalie, you wanted to say something right before?
Yes, thank you so much. I also share the sentiment of Angela and Alice, but I would like to now say something more related to what Angela said. The challenges are evolving. For example, I think Alice is aware of this because I've had this discussion in the past with her. Like, now we are empowered as young women in science, and we are trying to bring changes. And of course, that means we are a bit more empowered. But we live in a patriarchal society that has not trained the boy child to coexist, for example, with an empowered woman, So I have seen situations where my friends get opportunities to, for example, go and pursue their masters, and they've got full scholarship. And then she said, no, I'm not going to take this opportunity up because you know what? My biological clock is ticking. You know what? If I leave, the man will leave me. And so we're still in that place where even when opportunities are presented and are provided, someone will not take it up, because now society has told them that something else is better, you know? And so how do we change these narratives? How do we help the girl child navigate this, you know? Because she's smart, she's brilliant. Anyways, that's why she qualified for the grant. That's why she qualified for the scholarship. Mm? So I'm aware of, like, just this year, about 3 or 4 friends who turned down very nice offers because they needed to protect their family position. They needed to stay as wives or mothers, you know. And we are not saying these are bad, but how do we help them navigate? So I think, yeah, these are the challenges we still face, yeah?
Indeed. I don't know if Liz wants to say something, but I know that in the audience, sorry, Liz, after you comment, we have someone, Hadiza. She's my age. We are about 40, and she has 4 kids. So at some point, she's been putting herself and her career forward and beyond her personal life. But sorry, maybe she wants to share a bit of her thoughts. But Liz, how do you see that from also like your experience as a woman, as a scientist yourself as well?
I don't know. I think I'm past that, whatever. But there's always a trade-off. I think I don't know whether we're too caught up in this. I guess it's about priorities, but I think we're too caught up in the idea that we can have it all. Maybe you have something good. Maybe not have it all, but have something good. I don't know if there's such a balance that you can make. Is it possible to have it all? And what is all? I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. I said for a while that I had it all, you know. I had a scientific career, then I had 2 kids, but it's true that it came with a lot of suffering. You know, you have it all, but you have to pay a high price because you always feel society brings you this feeling of being guilty because you're never like a good enough mother, because you're never a good enough scientist. You're not enough time in the lab. You're not enough time with your kids. You're not enough time maybe with your partner. So you have this constant feeling of not being able to fulfill expectations from the different parts of your life.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy toll. I mean, mentally it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
But I think it's because we also women are very harsh on ourselves.
Yeah. Also now the opposite is somebody like me who is single, who has a thriving career, but then people say, but what happened?
But that's the pressure of society. It's like, what happened? Nothing happened. I just decided that that's how I wanted my life to be, like this, and this is it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's also like sometimes I've noticed that pressure comes from men, the patriarchal structure, but a lot of times it comes from other women as well.
Yeah, other women and internally.
Yeah, there's like, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't have kids. It's like, who told you I wanted to have kids on the first place, you know? So I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe I said I could have it all, but there was a cost on my mental health. And so then I didn't have it all because the stress and so
then you're not a good scientist even.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone has more, because I think we could be talking with Liz forever, but I don't know if anyone has more comments or questions, and because we've put I'm going to copy again the link for the book because just to make sure that everyone has it.
There are quite a number of messages. I've seen the link.
I've just put it again. I don't know. And is anybody having more comment or questions? Or we can say maybe we can leave the floor to Liz to wrap it up, and then we say bye.
Yeah, so for me, it's really
question, Liz. Liz, a quick question. Is this a one-off or it's going to be repetitive? Are we going to have these sessions more and more, or this was a one-off?
I would hope that we'd have another session. And what I would want to do if we have another session is to have the women who are featured in this book. They've been asking and, craving for an opportunity to speak to each other. We had a very good launch where it was COVID time, so they didn't meet physically, but it was a phenomenal meeting, even on Zoom. So they've been really craving to meet and to become an ecosystem of their own, just on the basis of having been selected on this book. So if I were to have another session, it would be with them and then with other women, so that you can hear straight from them. They can tell, these are just amazing women that I'm now proud to call my sisters, just based on the journey of telling their story. And there is something very fascinating about somebody telling you their story. It is just so fascinating, and so it creates such a bond. It is not the same as you hearing them make a scientific presentation. There's something very special about it. So I would want to have another session where these women would be there and they would give their own stories, and then other women would come in and just say how that story resonates with them, and men as well. You know, men really enjoyed those sessions as well, because I think being for women is not being against men, and the other way around. So, and we know very good men who've been allies, who've been mentors and all that. So that is the kind of session that I would really want to see. I really want to keep in touch with these women, and I want to keep not using them, but because we've already gone this far, I would want to build on that, on how far we've gone with them.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see that there is interest. I think it was Natalie. This is part of the online cafes that we do under the Open Doors Fellowship Program. And of course, I wanted to have Liz on board. But I would be also happy to work with her to see if we can have that part too. Because I think it's really, it's an eye-opener. And also, it as somebody, I think it was Angela or Alice, I don't remember. I think it was Alice. All of a sudden you realize that you are not fighting this battle on your own, that there's so many parallelism and similarities with other women. And I want to draw attention to the comment of Hadiza. She said, like, what matters is doing what you want when you want to. So you can see it's a very empowered woman, a very empowered Nigerian mother, scientist at the same time. She's gone very far. So that's also like, her story is also like outstanding, and a very nice narrative as well. But we would be happy to be able to help Liz if she wants. We open our doors to get that part too. And I was even thinking while she was presenting, like, can we bring Alice to Ghent? Liz, can we bring Liz to Ghent to this discussion here? We'll see.
So winding up, I think Aminat is right now. So I will see my colleagues at the United Nations Economic Formation for Africa. I'll give them this feedback, that will give them this platform, which we very much appreciate. I'll give them the feedback on all these ideas, all these questions. Can we, and see if they can provide the framework, because there's nothing more than a UN framework. And if we can all come together, what we've seen over the past, let's say 20 years, is how every little effort helps to transform. We've transformed, we have more scholarships for African women scientists, we have more opportunities for them. Not enough, but it just shows how every little helped. So that is what I would want to do. I would want to continue the activism, even though I'm not a scientist.
That's fantastic. We have all become activists after this talk. All right. So we're going to wrap it here. We are extremely grateful and thankful to Liz for her insights, and to all of you for your active discussion. We will try, I think, because there was a registration, we'll try to be in touch with all of you. And because someone was asking for maybe I propose a WhatsApp group, and we will do our best to keep in touch with you. And so we also create this, we can start having this little community that hopefully will grow bigger and bigger.
Okay. All right.
Stay well.
Stay well.
Bye.
Christmas.
Bye.
Thank you.